I started WhitPR on that carpet in our 1-bedroom apartment. I started with nothing. I didn't have any money saved. I didn't have any media contacts. And as a publicist, that's like your bread and butter. I didn't know how to write a pitch. I didn't know how to build a business. And when I look at it now, we have a staff of 11. We just moved into a new office space. The Dreena that started this company 10 years ago, this is what I dreamed of. Just keep going, because I never gave up despite like every roadblock or obstacle that was thrown at me. I just kept going. Yeah, you know, when you're in the middle of it, you're like, yo, I hate it here. Like, how can I get out of this? Like, why is this happening to me? But when I look back, I would not change any of those experiences for a different outcome. Hey, this is Dreena Whitfield, founder of WhitPR, and you're listening to Dreams and Drive.
Hey, Dream Drivers, welcome to episode 275 of the Dreams and Drive podcast. And today our guest is Dreena Whitfield, who's the founder and CEO of WhitPR, which is an integrated strategic communications agency that's committed to shaping and amplifying the narratives that drive brand success. With more than a decade of experience, Dreena and her team have a proven ability to work exclusively at the intersection of Black identities and media. And some of their clients include the Black Lives Matter Global Network, the Council of Urban Professionals, Because of Them We Can, the Newark Public School District, Scotch Porter, Amazon's Guava Island, Prudential Financial, and more. Ebony Magazine has named her one of the top 10 Black women in politics, and Huffington Post named her one of the top 25 Millennial Publicists, and she was recently named one of PR Week's 40 Under 40 in PR. It is so humbling to have Dreena in the guest chair today so she can tell us about how she put her dream into drive and started WhitPR from the living room in her 1-bedroom apartment, right? And how over the past 10 years, she has grown it into the agency that it is today. Our conversation is filled with so much about what it means to put your dreams into drive, some of the learning, mistakes, and challenges she's made along the way. And plus, she also gives us some really great insider PR tips that dream drivers who are looking to either do DIY publicity or trying to hire a publicist, things that you should be keeping in mind as you are honing in on your digital and your media presence. And she also clues us in on some of the things that she's learned since COVID-19 and what we as professionals, we as dream drivers should be thinking about as we forge along our own dream driving journeys. As always, if you enjoyed this episode, please make sure that you are sharing it across your social media networks. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Dreams and Drive, and make sure you're using the hashtag Dreams and Drive as well. If you want to join our online newsletter, The Keys, and get weekly updates via email, just go to dreamsanddrive.com/join. That's dreamsanddrive.com/join. All right, let's hear from Dreena.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
I am super excited to have you on the show. I feel like our paths have crossed before, and now we're finally, now you're on the show. You can tell your story instead of me having, me interviewing your clients and telling their stories,
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
So, Dreena, I love to start our interviews by going back in time, right? I know you're a Jersey girl like me, but you grew up in Westfield, right? And I grew up in Orange.
What does that mean?
Listen. No. I'm saying, we're from different hoods, right? You know what I mean? So,
okay. Westfield ain't got no hood.
You know what I mean? Like, we're just, what I'm saying is, let's just go back in time. We're both Jersey girls. We just grew up in different towns. What was inspiring you as a kid? Like, what were your childhood dreams? What did you think the adult Dreena was going to be?
Honestly, I thought the adult Dreena was going to be a singer.
Okay.
I grew up in the church, church choir, all of that, soloist. I was a Hal Jackson talented teen, and my talent was singing. So that was like a goal. Mm-hmm. And then I think I just wasn't serious about it. And I think the last time I did the pageant, I didn't place where I wanted to place, and it like crushed my dreams. Oh man! So I was like, this is it. I'm never singing again. I think that was my goal when I was a little girl.
All right, and then how did that? I guess you said you stopped after you didn't win that pageant, but how did that pan out into a young adulthood? Were there certain things that you were finding out? Oh, I really like this, or I could see myself doing this when I'm older, beyond singing?
Yeah. I mean, also while I was in high school, I used to write fiction stories and share it with my group of friends. Like literally, I'd write them down in my notebook and we'd pass it around. I'm like, yo, here's chapter 2, here's chapter 3, whatever. And that's when I just like discovered my love of writing and storytelling. And so when I went to college, I went to Lake University, the first HBCU out in PA. My initial major was political science, just because I'm also like a political nerd, with a minor in comms. And then ultimately I just switched it to comms and a business minor. And, you know, through that journey, I was like, yo, I could really apply my love of writing, storytelling, interacting with different people underneath this communications umbrella.
So was it easy for you to figure out how to make that happen post-college? Because I know a lot of us, we have these dreams, we have this, you know, we think life is going to be a certain way. For me, I thought I was going to have this big media job post-college, but it didn't happen for me. What about you?
Yeah, same. You know, as a little Black girl, it was always my dream to be a writer for Essence Magazine. Like that was like goals for me. And then when I graduated college, you know, it was hard to find a job. Like, and I didn't want to be a journalist. I really wanted to be in PR. Like that was like, did a few internships during college and that's what I really wanted to focus on. But it was hard for me to find a job that was paying. A lot of people were offering me these internships at a lot of white agencies because Dreena wanted to do fashion PR. And they were like, yeah, you can come in an intern. And I was like, I got bills.
Everybody wants an unpaid intern, right? Everybody just wants you to intern.
Yes. And I just took a job working at a small nonprofit in Jersey City called the Central Avenue Special Improvement District. And I started off as their marketing coordinator. And this is where I got to interact with small mom and pop shops along that Central Avenue block in Jersey City. And, you know, they were trying to figure out marketing and PR methods that they could implement to compete with the big store retailers that were coming into the area. And honestly, now that I look back, it's like, yo, it's like a full circle moment because a lot of my current clients at WhitPR are like small to mid-sized companies that are looking to like make a splash in these different business verticals.
Did you feel confident that, you know, once you were getting your feet wet in the industry, did you feel confident that you had made the right decision? Because a lot of us sometimes, you know, we start to doubt, like, is this for me? Is this not for me? Do you remember what you were feeling back then?
I was definitely doubting a lot of my decisions because the positions that I started to take were, you know, taking me off the path of like my dream goal, which was to work in PR. So after I worked at this small nonprofit, I started working as a temp at American Express. But you know, American Express is an amazing company. Like anybody would want to work there. And I was temping there while the CEO was a Black man named Ken Chanel, and it was just inspiring. But I was doing direct mail campaigns, and those are the junk mail letters that you get. Like, hey, you're pre-qualified for XYZ. I was helping to put those things together, and I hated it. I hated it with passion. And because I was still young, I was temp. I was like, I need a full-time job where I can get some benefits. My mother had moved to Chicago. I had moved back to Jersey, was staying with a friend. And I was like, yeah, I got to get my life in order. And so I ended up at Great Global Group, just following that track of like, oh, this is going to be a full-time job with Benny's, and it can help me grow within the agency. And maybe I can like go to a different department within the agency because it's an agency. They have all these different verticals. And I just got stuck there. And then I worked at that company for a few years while still trying to work with some folks on the side, like as a side hustle. And then one day I just went and quit. And I had no clients. I had no plan laid out, no money saved.
So you quit the stable job.
I launched with PR. Yeah.
So
but I wouldn't advise people to do that.
Okay. I was going to say that.
Don't do that. Or like, thank God I had an amazing partner who was my boyfriend and is now my husband at the time, like who's now my husband, who was like, yo, if you quit, I got you. And he was literally the reason why I felt confident enough to do it at that time. If it were Dreena now, I would probably not do it without having like a nice cushion to get me through like the hard points.
So let's talk about that. Like, do you remember the day? It probably was like a oh shit moment, right? Like, this is real. I got to make it happen. Where did you start? Like, what were the first things that you did to really put this new dream into motion?
I would like work nonstop around the clock. So I would come home from my 9 to 5 on my commute back from the city into Jersey because I was living in Linden at the time. I would just brainstorm and write things down on my way home around what the vision was, what I wanted to do, what type of clients I wanted to work with, and how I was going to do that. I didn't really know what I was doing. Honestly, I didn't. I was like, if somebody was like, yo, I need some PR marketing help, I was like, I got you. I could do it all. I could do graphic design. I could put together an event. I could write a press release. I could pitch. Not knowing how to do any of that, really. I mean, I knew some of like the processes that you needed to like execute a campaign because of my work in agency, but like I didn't realistically know what I was doing.
But looking back, do you think having a little bit of that naivety, right? Like being a little bit naive was helpful? Because I think a lot of us sometimes, like when we overthink too much, we go nowhere. We're literally just stuck in park. So being a little naive could be helpful at times. Extremely helpful because, I quit my job to start this company. But, while I was still building WhitPR, I would go to J. Crew at Short Hills Mall and work. I would go to Bloomie's to still work while I'm still trying to build my dream because I would hit these road bumps because I'm trying to sell that I could do one thing. And they're like, oh yeah, we ain't pay you. You ain't got no contract, none of that stuff. So I wasn't making any money. And I was like, I have to do something to like, I still want to do this dream and pursue like having my own agency, but I need to make some money. So like I said, Dreena now probably would not take that leap like Dreena 10 years ago did. But I think it's really because I was super naive. I think that helped me, honestly, in the long run. What do you think helped you not give up in the early days when you weren't making money and you weren't really seeing the traction you wanted?
I think because I grew up in a single parent home. My mother raised me and my brother in Westfield, which when people hear Westfield, they're like, oh, yo, that's an affluent like town. And
I think of Trader Joe's.
Yeah, right. And it's very white. It's very like lacrosse and BMWs and stuff like that. I didn't have any of that. My mother worked 2-3 jobs at one time to take care of me and my brother. And I think, watching her hustle and instill that hard work ethic into me and my brother really played a role into like me not giving up because I never saw her give up. She may have like went into a bathroom and cried in the house or whatever, but me seeing her work so hard, it instilled that work ethic into me. So when I was, building WhitPR, I think people would say, no, of course I'd had breakdowns, I'd be crying or whatever, but I would still always go back to like pursuing my dream.
So let's talk about, I guess you were having paid clients, but the first paid client that actually mattered or that, was a catalyst client for you. If you could think back, who was it? Maybe you don't have to mention names, but how did this client really serve as a catalyst in your dream driving journey? You know what?
I would say the first paying client would have to be Nork Now, which was a nonprofit founded by Senator Cory Booker, who was mayor at the time of the city of Newark. Mm-hmm. They were my first paying client. And like, I think they were only paying me like $1,800 a month at that point. Mm-hmm. But I was like, yo, I got my first client, 1,800. And it just felt good to be like compensated for something I had just came up with in my living room, And so granted, $1,800 was a lot at that time, I'm sure. I can't even remember. I'm trying to calculate how much my rent and stuff was. But, I was so hyped and so like excited that somebody was actually compensating me for something that I had just came up with, that I was going above and beyond to fill my scope of work and do the work.
What was your expertise at this time? Like, what were the things that you realized, and I am so good at this. I am truly, like, when you hype yourself up, like, yo, you got this. You're a rock star at this. Were there certain things that you were realizing about yourself during this time?
Yeah, I was like, yo, I know how to pitch. I know how to write a solid pitch that can get people placements. Or I know how to identify a story that you may not think is newsworthy. I knew how to make it newsworthy.
And especially working like in the nonprofit realm, like even working like with Cory Booker, like those were things that really mattered, right? Because you have to know how to tell the right story and the story that matters, but also an accurate story.
And it helped, honestly, that he was a hot commodity. He wasn't as like huge as he is right now, but people were definitely interested in him. And so him having a nonprofit, they were, they did an annual like mother's baby drive that, I just found ways to make things newsworthy and write pitches. And I put on my research hat and found the contacts even when I didn't have a database. And so I think the combination of me being able to really be nosy and like stalk and find people was helpful, but also like my love of storytelling, those two together, like really helped me like start to feel myself like, yo, I really know what I'm doing.
I just realized we didn't actually explain. I would hope people would know, but for people who don't understand what you do, right? Tell us what you do. What is WhitPR? What is publicity? What is it that you do and you specialize in?
So WhitPR is a integrated strategic communications agency. Our sweet spot, I would say, is media relations. So when you see some of your favorite brands or your favorite like personalities or clients in some of in newspapers and magazines or on television, they have PR teams that help pitch and place them and get those opportunities for them to tell their story.
And I remember growing up in media. Well, I say growing up because I used to intern at CBS in college. I feel like the jobs people always said were the hardest were sales and PR, right? Like the most stressful jobs. Do you feel, would you agree that it is a stressful job?
Yes. You have to deal with rejection a lot. You have to have thick skin. And honestly, I was so sensitive when I started, like things used to get to me. Like somebody said no. If a client was upset, like I would literally internalize that and like play it over and over in my head. And I'm like, how can I like rectify this? It's a very stressful job. You have to stay on. You have to like know how to handle rejection. You have to know how to follow up without seeming like you're stalking people. And you have to know how to actually do the work. Especially now we live in such an instant gratification world that everyone thinks they're a publicist or tries to say they're a publicist, but doesn't really understand like the strategy that goes into fully executing a campaign on behalf of a client. And so even now I'm stressed, even to this day, like I be stressed the hell out at home. I'm like, and why? Just because it's just the nature of our industry.
Yeah. We'll get back to that because there are some things I want to talk to you about that. But once you so North Now was your first like big paying client at the time, right? Yeah. What were the things that you were doing to really grow the brand? Because it's one thing to realize that you have these gifts, that you're really great at it, but what do you do with that, right? That's the next step. So how did you now say, all right, I have what it takes. Let me actually build something here.
I was honestly just winging it. I even to this day, majority of my clients have been word of mouth. I think maybe this last year was the first year I've ever had to submit an RFP. And so I've been blessed and very fortunate that like my work and the work of like my agency like speaks for itself. And so I think once I started feeling overwhelmed to the point where I couldn't do everything, I needed to hire some help. And of course, that's a scary thing for me because A, I don't know how to hire anybody. B, like, what you pay people these days? That's what I used to be thinking. And then like, how do you become an effective manager while still doing the work? So like literally when I tell you I did not know anything, I didn't know how to start a business. I didn't know how to write a contract. I didn't know how to hire anybody. I didn't know how to manage a team. You ask if I knew how to do it, I'll probably tell you no.
So since you didn't know how to do it, then how did you figure out how to do it?
Google.
And
I went to Google. I remember my first contract was through Google. I just put in contract template on Google. And I just went in and literally just swapped out certain things like my name, the address or whatever. And that was like my first contract. And that me using that contract maybe for a few years or maybe even a year or a couple months, honestly, was like, yo, you really need to hire a lawyer because there's things that's happening to you, like a bounce check from a client or non-payment, that these things are happening and you don't have protection in your contract for you or your business. And then if you have someone that you hired on your team, how are you going to pay them if you can't even get the money from your client who you've already done all this work for? That happened to me like a few times. I remember we had got a client on a Wendy Williams appearance at a time. It was a huge appearance. And, they wrote me a bad check. And I went to deposit it naively. And it was like, yeah, we can't process this. So now I don't even take paper checks right now, unless you're like a government agency or that's the only way you can pay like
wire me that money, okay?
Yes.
Wire it.
ACH, please. ACH. You pull it or we pull it. Like how you want to do it.
But keep going.
I was gonna say, but these are all things that I had to learn. Like, I didn't think like, yo, somebody's really gonna write me a bad check. I didn't even think that until it happened.
And I feel like that's a good lesson though. Like things are going to happen to you, but if you never got started, like if you had just thought about, okay, I want to start this business, I want to do this and never actually did anything, then you'd be in the same place. So sometimes you do have to experience those challenges in order to get better. Hey, Dream Drivers. I don't know about you, but for me, the summer is the time when I indulge all my cravings. And sometimes I just want to bite up a big, juicy burger. And when I want that, I go and get me a McDonald's Big Mac. You can't forget about your McDonald's world famous fries. And I always add an order of an Oreo McFlurry too. And listen, I'm not a huge beef eater. So when I do eat beef, I try to make it count. And for me, I go heavy on the mac sauce. I always make sure I get my pickle to eat my Big Mac in peace. Now that I have a baby Dream Driver, I got to make sure that I don't have to share everything because he's always in my plate. But listen, I haven't always been a Big Mac fan, but the day I tried it, I can now resonate with the whole, you don't know what you're missing until you've had a Big Mac. And you'll never forget the first person that put you on. So let me be that person for you. If you haven't already tried a Big Mac, make sure you add it to your next Mickey D's order. If you're like me and you're always on the go, you can always order ahead on the McDonald's mobile app. I went through so many challenges in building WhitPR that, you know, when you're in the middle of it, you're like, yo, I hate it here. Like, how can I get out of this? Like, why is this happening to me? But when I look back, I would not change any of those experiences for a different outcome. They all made me who I am. They all brought me to this place. And I appreciate every, challenge as a learning lesson. Let's talk about one of those challenges. What's a challenge that really rocked your world, Dreena, that you don't mind sharing with our Dream Drivers? And how did you overcome that? Like I said, this industry, especially if you're a PR agency, right? It's a service-based, industry, right? Because my agency was so small, for a while, like every client that came on, they ultimately became like family, like because we started from the bottom, we grew, we're celebrating each other. And, I think the heartbreak that happens sometimes is like, you realize like, no, this is just transactional. Like, yeah, they're cool. Y'all may have Kiki, may go to lunch, they may take you on vacation or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's still a transactional business. And for me, I think because I invest a lot in the people that we work with and we support, that when those things happened to me in the past, it was like heartbreaking. Because I was like, what happened? Like, there was no level of transparency. It was just like, yeah, we're going to go with another agency.
without clear explanation. But, those things happened, but a lot of times they came back. So sometimes when I think that I had to get out of like internalizing these things is like a lot of clients, we would help get them in a good space. And then they feel like, we can go to somewhere bigger and better and bounce. And then they'd ultimately come back. So I think just learning to like not take things personally was like a huge learning curve for me.
I was going to say, like, how does it, do you take clients back when that happens? Or does it depend?
It depends. And if they do come back, it's a bit of a markup.
Okay. Yeah.
Nah, but seriously, like, also I think like one thing that I always try to tell entrepreneurs is like, when you're building, like, be realistic with your prices and like your retainer fees and like, just the process with your money, because, when you're starting out, you undervalue yourself because you're just so trying to get on. You're trying to like get this client to like get the movement going. And at the end of the day, you're putting in a lot more work than what you're being compensated for, if you're even being compensated, honestly. And I think you just need to step back and really, come up with like clear plan.
I think that's a really good tip. Was there any other business lessons too that you were learning during this time, just about what it takes to really run a successful business beyond just the PR world?
When folks are starting out, one of the things like you often discount is like having an accountant, right? You're thinking like, I'm just starting, like I can just get an accountant later. I think the sooner you can hire one, the better, because they can help you as your business grows. And they can say to you like, make sure you put XYZ amount aside every time you process a sale or you have a client payment, because you're going to have to pay the IRS at the end of the year. Don't forget that point.
That self-employment tax, however your business is set up, it's real, and they want their money. Okay.
Wow, exactly. They coming for that check. And then also just finding legal services to help you develop like your contracts, help you with trademarking if you need that. So just your business is protected and you are protected are key too.
Well, those are good. Those are good tips. So let's get into some fun, get into your world now, the publicity world, and talking a little bit more about what you are an expert in. I think we get this question a lot, right? Do you need a publicist or not, right? Is DIY publicity, can you do it? Should you do it forever? When do you think is the time for, dream drivers to think about investing in a professional?
I think you can do it to a certain extent. A lot of people will start a business and think like, I need to hire a publicist like right now because I'm about to be like out here. You don't need to do that right then and there. Like you need to like figure out ways you can do some PR yourself, like build those local relationships. I always tell people to make sure you build a splash locally before you try to go after these like big national syndicated shows or, major publications. So there are a few things you can do yourself, like just make sure you get the assignment desk from your local news channel, like maintain relationships with them, share with them any like major news happening with you or your business. And then don't discount like local bloggers, especially people who are just starting out, because honestly, you don't know where they're going to be in 5 to 10 years. And if you build a relationship with them now, in 5 to 10 years, you've already had that, rapport with them. Like if they're like an editor at Essence or Glam or whatever, you can just text them. You can send them a note like, hey, I'm doing this. Or they may just remember their interaction with you and be like, hey, I know I did a story on XYZ years ago. Let me circle back. And also like sometimes the local bloggers, they write the best stories because they're so hungry. They're
so invested and their heart is there.
Yes.
I love that you said that, because I'm not going to say I'm big time because I'm nowhere near big time.
You right out here?
But listen, I really do appreciate the people who, like 2016 Dreams and Drive, were saying yes to being on the show, were believing in the vision because they didn't have to, right? And I felt like quality content doesn't only have to come from bigger names. Because as you said, some of those top-notch, higher-tiered publications, they may have distribution, but the story doesn't have as much heart. Sometimes. It can depend. And I'm not going to write them all off.
And honestly, right now, a lot of like newsrooms are short-staffed.
Yeah.
So yeah, they might be interested in your story, but they don't have the bandwidth to actually assign someone to write it or cover it. They might just take your press release or whatever you sent them, and that's the story that you see.
Yeah.
Because they don't have the time.
So one thing you mentioned earlier was about how you know how to really make a great pitch, right? Would you mind sharing one of your Dreena Whitfield, behind the scenes tips? Like what goes into a great pitch if someone's trying to do it themselves? They're trying to, reach out to a local assignment desk or someone local. What are the components of really making sure that your story is heard?
I always tell people to keep it nice and like short and sweet. Sometimes people think when they're reaching out to press, there's so much I got to say. Let me just tell you everything.
I hate that. I'm like, I'm not reading this 5 pages.
Deleting it right away, right? Or they're attaching things. Like, don't attach anything unless somebody asks you. Don't do that. I think just keeping it short and sweet. What's like who you are, what's the main thing that you want to get across in whatever story you're pitching them for, and how can they reach you? Those are the 3 main things. Like even here at WhitPR, I teach our girls to like make sure your pitch is no longer than 3 paragraphs. Introduction. Hi, my name is my name is XYZ. I'm reaching out to you on behalf of XYZ. And this is happening. Here's a little bit of meat about who they are, what they're doing at XYZ. Last paragraph. Here's how you can reach them. Would love to share more if you're interested. Keep it nice and short and sweet because people don't have time, especially like right now, like I said, where the newsrooms are like, short staffed, people are, have tons of deadlines. They need to like read things that are quick and simple and easy to digest.
Yeah. And I think especially too, making sure that it's relevant. Cause I hate when I get pitches like, hey, I would love to have my dog featured on your show. I'm like, oh, your dog's a dream driver. Oh, your dog
That's another thing. That's another thing. You have to know the publication that you're pitching. You have to make sure whatever story you're pitching them makes sense to that person that you're pitching, but also their readers or their listeners or their viewers. Because if, like you said, if it's not in alignment, like, why are you even emailing me?
Yeah, I really did have someone pitch me about their dog. I'm not lying. Like, it was so bizarre. I'm like,
how is that going to happen? How is that going to happen?
I don't know. Maybe the dog had a great story. It was like some kind of show dog. It was very interesting, but I was just like, this is crazy.
And you also have to know that you're pitching the right person, not just the outlet. You have to make sure you're pitching the right person because someone may work at Elle, but I'm the beauty writer at Elle. You're pitching me about a cultural like piece or a finance piece. Like you just have to do your research, follow them on social media, read some of their recent articles because it will tell you all about who they are, what they write about, and it will help you determine if your pitch and brand is in alignment with what they cover.
I feel like Instagram is such a great tool for doing research, especially if you're in the culture space, just because you can really see what these writers are thinking about in real time, what they're sharing in real time. Like use Instagram, use social media to your advantage, especially when you're trying to pitch. That's what I found really works.
And it's so different now because when I started, I would literally go to CVS, Walgreens, whatever, and just buy a bunch of magazines and just go down the masthead and literally find the name and try to figure out their email via Google. Now it's like people have their emails in their Instagram profile. They have it in their Twitter. And if you're starting out, you don't necessarily need to invest in like a Cision database right now because a lot of these writers have their contact info in their profiles. But they will also let you know how they like to be pitched.
Yeah. Like don't be in everybody's DMs, okay?
Right. Do not DM.
Some people like DMs, some people don't. So just make sure the safe way for me is always go email route. Or what I'll do is, hey, I'm going to email you. Just want to give you a heads up or something like that. And I think you can also use Instagram to warm relationships. Like people's pictures.
Engage in their content.
Yes. Yep. I love that. I love when I see someone in my inbox that I've already seen before. So it makes me want to open their emails, especially when they're pitching the show.
Yep.
So one thing, entrepreneur life is one thing, right, Dreena, but mom life. I can't have you on the show. Now that I'm a mom, I've been asking all the other moms, right? How do you balance it, right? You said your son is 6 now, right? So you've been a mompreneur for 6 years. How do you think motherhood has changed your approach to business or how you do business?
It's allowed me to set clear boundaries. I went back to work 2 weeks after I had my son.
Well,
like
girl.
I'm like, why did I do that? But again, this is that hustle mode, right?
Yeah.
I wouldn't advise anybody to do that. Now, that you have another little person in your world looking up to you, depending on you, you have to make sure you clock out. Even though you're the founder, you're the driving force behind the business, sometimes you have to clock out and be present for them to make sure they grow up as a whole human. And so I've set clear boundaries. I put my phone on do not disturb after at a certain time every night. I don't respond to certain emails until the next morning after I've already done drop off in the morning, after I've already made sure he's eaten breakfast. He's my number one priority right now. WhitPR was my first baby and will always be my baby. I have an actual physical human being that depends on me now. And, I think also the pandemic helped put a lot of things in perspective, and what's really important. And, my family is that. It's the number one thing for me.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I remember you posting about you getting COVID-19 on social media and how that kind of just put everything into perspective. Our lives really, I think it's so crazy that when we think about pre-March 2020 and now it's July. It's wait, what was life like before the pandemic? I can't remember.
We was out here wilding. That's what life was like. People was out here being crazy. We was touching things without sanitizing. We was but the pandemic really put a lot of things in perspective. I got COVID I don't even know how. I was
a lot of people don't know.
I was did I get at Target, whatever. And the funny thing is, I thought I just had a sinus infection because I get them every year consistently. And then I lost my sense of smell. I lost my taste. And I was like, something's up. And we went to get tested. And first they told me that I was negative. My husband and my son were both negative. They called me back 5 minutes later. And I was like, actually, Dreena, you're positive. And I had a whole breakdown. Because this is when you just saw people really, really going through it. And it was hard. But it allowed me to really sit up in my room because I was quarantined away from them for the whole time. And, it made me miss my family a lot. And I used to be such I still am a workaholic, but at the end of the day, my family is key.
How do you think COVID shaped the PR industry? Because a lot of, events weren't happening. People's businesses had to pivot, right? Yeah. And even the news cycle, it was just all about COVID for a long time. Do you remember what you were doing during that time to really still make sure your clients were relevant?
Yeah, I mean, at the onset of the pandemic, maybe 2 or 3 of my clients paused because they just were not sure what was happening. And honestly, they weren't really relevant to what was happening in the news cycle. Every single story was about COVID, every single story. But this was also at the height of the presidential election. And so a lot of our clients, WhitPR, I'm blessed. That's all I can say. In the midst of this pandemic, when a lot of people were losing clients, a lot of people were losing their jobs, et cetera, WhitPR picked up a lot of work and a lot of client work. And it was really focused on stories that really mattered to Black and Brown communities. We cared about how we were going to be able to vote for this presidential election. We wanted to know what the hell COVID was. Is it true only white people can get it? Because remember, that was out there.
I remember that.
Right? Who comes up with this stuff? And then just dispelling the myths around this vaccine. And this pandemic.
Yeah.
And we had to pivot. and figure out the stories that, our media contacts really cared about and were interested in. And we were able to amplify a lot of, stories and movements during that time, from voting rights to a public health care practitioner who was really one of the first Black women to participate in a COVID-19 vaccine. And, the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, which is the largest civil rights organization, how they were putting some methods in place so Black and brown people could get out and vote because they were out here crazy.
Yeah.
So I think just when things happen like this, you got to know how to pivot. And right now people don't care about hair gel that's going to last all night or whatever, like the fluff pieces. They wanted like concrete news stories.
And I think it also goes to show how a lot of all the things that you did in the past came back to help you too, right? Like you being a political science major in the beginning, you working with Cory Booker, press secretary, having that nonprofit work in the beginning, like it all matters. And I think sometimes as dream drivers, we might think that what we're going through right now doesn't really matter, or the journey, everything along the journey is going to come back into play and help you. I think that your story is really a great example of that.
Exactly. It's very, very true. Like everything that I tried to like maybe, stay away from in the early part of my career really helped me thrive during this trying season. And like the tools that I learned during those times were essential to what was happening within this last year.
Yep. So what do you think are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned about Dreena, the dream driver, right? Like what have you learned about yourself along this journey, Dreena?
That I'm stronger than I thought I was, and we live in such a time where folks, buy social media likes, they do all this like glitz and glammed up content. And as a business owner, sometimes you're like, yo, do I need to do that? Do I need to do like lifestyle content? I think this moment where I am right now, because honestly, today is what, can I say what day it is?
The end of July.
It's the end of July. My team right now is getting ready for us to celebrate my top women in PR in 2021. I just was announced on the PR Week 40 Under 40 list yesterday. I think, the one thing that I've come to realize through everything that I've been through is like my work speaks for itself. Yep. I'm a lot stronger than I thought I was. And at the end of the day, God always orders your steps. Everything that he has put, like every like obstacle that you've come across, every like roadblock that you've hit is all part of the process. And to just remain faithful and know that you actually know what you're doing.
Yep. And it's funny, I think we're Facebook friends, and when you share the post, I think you commented, and to think I started this from my 1-bedroom apartment, right?
Listen, my team hates when I say that. They were like, you better not say that.
No, but I started this. It's motivational. It's inspirational.
I was talking about it with my husband the other day because I was like, yo, you remember we had the micro suede sectional from Ashley Furniture with the red shag rug? That's not even my vibe. But I was like, I started WhitPR on that carpet in our 1-bedroom apartment. And it's really been able to like afford me a life of where I'm able to like empower and, champion other Black and brown women. My agency is all Black women, like give them opportunities that I wasn't afforded, provide me with opportunities that I never even thought would happen to me. So I think just staying the course and staying like crystallized, like staying super, super focused on like your goal and like ignore the naysayers. Like at the end of the day, people will try to dismay you from whatever you think you can do because they don't think that they could never see themselves doing anything like that.
So what's the dream now?
Just to make an impact, to continue to grow WhitPR to the point where I'm able to give, as many Black and brown women the opportunities that I wish were, out there when I started, to like have a culture at WhitPR that is like Black girl magic, where we get things done. We're, encouraging, empowering, and supportive, and, really telling the stories that matter. to like our communities.
I love that. I love that, Dreena. You know, I have to ask you this because I know with dream driving, there will be times when we want to give up, right? There will be times when like we think we're running out of gas and we don't know what to do. What would you say to that dream driver who feels like giving up right now? Like what do you hope they got out of hearing your story?
I would say don't. I mean, if you listen back, I said at the very beginning of this, how I started with nothing. I didn't have any money saved. I didn't have any media contacts. And as a publicist, that's like your bread and butter. I didn't know how to write a pitch. I didn't know how to build a business. And when I look at it now, we have a staff of 11. We just moved into a new office space. The Dreena that started this company 10 years ago, this is what I dreamed of. So I think, just keep going, because I never gave up despite like every roadblock or obstacle that was thrown at me. I just kept going.
I love that, Dreena. But one more thing, right? You can't be a dream driver without your keys to success. So can you tell us 3 things that you think every dream driver needs in their toolkit before they hit the road?
I would highly suggest you invest in is like an accountant to help you with, the financial piece of your business, or a bookkeeper. Because sometimes you're so caught up doing the work that you forget to like really keep an eye on that. And you don't want to be hit with a crazy tax bill. Then next, I would say a trademark attorney to help you, make sure your business is protected. And the third thing I would say, just a digital presence. There's a lot of things you could do for little or no money, like building a website, securing your Twitter handle, your Instagram handle, your Facebook handle. All of those things are free.
Thank you so much, Dreena. This has been such an inspirational interview. So much fun.
Yeah.
I normally don't do my interviews with a video on. I might have to do more of these. So it's kind of fun to kind of see your face as we're doing it.
Look, I was like, she gonna have her camera off. I'm gonna turn mine off too. But no, I'm glad we did this.
But congratulations on everything. And I'm over here rooting for you, girl. I'm rooting for you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, so that was a wrap for episode 275 with Dreena. I hope you enjoyed hearing her dream driving journey as well as her keys to success. Guys, I ask you this every week, but if you enjoyed this episode, please make sure that you're sharing it. Post a screenshot of you listening on Instagram, tag us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, wherever you are. If you enjoyed just hearing how Dreena was able to put this dream of hers into motion, she wanted to start a PR company. She didn't know too much about what goes into it, but she just got going, and everything she learned along the way. That's the biggest takeaway that I took from her, is you have to just get started sometimes, right? You may not know how things will pan out, but if you never get started, you'll never be able to look back on how far you have come. Keep sharing this story. Keep enjoying the show. If you want to get added to our weekly newsletter, The Keys, and get weekly updates via email, just go to dreamsanddrive.com/join. That's dreamsanddrive.com/join. Remember, you can subscribe wherever you're listening so that you don't miss new episodes of Dreams and Drive. And lastly, guys, if you want to get Dreams and Drive gear, t-shirts and crew neck sweatshirts are still available online. You can shop the Dreams and Drive store at dreamsanddrive.com/shop. That's dreamsanddrive.com/shop. Keep dreaming, keep driving, and we'll chat again in episode 276. Bye, guys.